I was really very excited to be invited to speak today and to talk about something that I'm very passionate about, which is Montessori education. But I have to tell you that I thought twice, because public speaking is nowhere on my to-do list in life. But I am very passionate about education and continue to be excited about it as much as I was at 20 years old when I entered the field. I know that children are the heart and soul of the future, and so working with them is very important. I was really thinking about the fact that I might be addressing lots of parents, and I think we might have a variety of parents and interested educators in the audience today. So I hope that we can connect well, both as parents and as educators. I know that we look at children today and we see their genius. We look at, especially the 0 to 6 age, they come in and they've already learned something so quickly, and we think, where did they get that? Our jaws drop. And we're sort of in awe of this learning ability that children have. And then immediately the responsibility for that. You know, how do we nurture our children? What choices do we make that would make it best, give them the best opportunity to become the adult that they already have inside them? And at the same time, we want to keep them safe, and we want to guide them as much as possible. So I think parenting, being a teacher, is a most awesome responsibility. It's the most wonderful experience in life. It is, we think it's our children growing, and all the while, it is ourselves growing at the same time. We keep up with these wonderful beings. They give us opportunity to grow. I think it's tough times as a parent and educators to keep the values and the core of our lives intact while dealing with a great deal of external influence into our lives that takes us away from who we are. The second reason I really wanted to be here is because I completely believe in children. I'm convinced that they are born with the potential to become who they want to be and need to be in this world, and that they have gifts and talents that we don't see immediately maybe, but we want them to flourish so that we do get the benefits of them becoming the adult that's within them. I really think that it's important for children to stay connected and develop their connection with their inner lives, that their spiritual being and their centeredness is critical to making their way in the world. And I think that Montessori addressed this beautifully in the very beginnings over 100 years ago. I think that children really need to be seen, need to be heard, need to be supported, need to be understood, and need to be able to fly when they can. I know that well-educated, intact children will make a better world for us. And that I really think it's about the only thing that will make a difference, is staying intact and being aware of their place in the universe. I was in public school for a while and learned a great deal. But one thing catapulted me into Montessori. I was visiting a mentor's classroom and just, learning the ropes. And I watched this excited 5th grader come up to her with a paper and turned it in. This was his homework. He was proud about it and was saying to the teacher, I left my homework paper at school yesterday, but I did this because I knew sort of what I needed to do. I was impressed. The teacher said, this is not the assignment I gave you. You should be remembering your papers, and it's not acceptable. You will be in at lunch so that you can do the homework. And in that moment, I saw that light just drop to the floor in that child. And I said, I do not want to be a part of this. I do not want it for children. And, you know, I'm done with this. It needs to be done differently. The message the teacher gave was, obedience to the teacher is more important than problem solving and initiative. And I thought, how could we be saying that to children? I would have, if I was that parent, sending my child off and knowing that, or maybe not even knowing, but I would have wished that the teacher could say, amazing, what a great job you took that initiative to do that work. And maybe later in the day coming back and saying, you know, what strategies would you want to learn or practice to see if you could remember the things that you need to take home, so you have what you need at home. That would have been wonderful, but that was not what happened. And I knew then, I mean, obedience is not the purpose of education. Education is so much more. What was exciting to me is that I found Montessori to be that so much more. I saw room for that. Montessori educational environments have met the needs of children across cultures, across socioeconomic differences, across the test of time. It is the largest pedagogy in the world. It's in so many countries and so meeting the needs of so many children. And it's over 100 years old. So that's great. But what I find most important is that it is vibrant, and it is relevant, and it is a great example of 21st century education. I recently saw a quick view on NBC, and they were doing this video of what 21st century would look like. And so the speakers were talking about some of these aspects that they thought were coming up, you know, with the critical thinking and the things that Dale talking about, those important elements. And the whole time the video was running, it was a Montessori classroom. They were showing an example of Montessori classrooms. I could see that because I know what they look like. They didn't really say that it was a Montessori classroom, and I thought, oh my goodness, you know, the Montessori method is really very vital today. It's very alive, and I'm wanting to speak to the reasons why I think it is, and what's driving Montessori and why it is still so relevant and vibrant. So there's a lot I could talk about, because when you go to see a Montessori classroom, it's very different. Kids are not at desks, they're allowed to move around, they're in multi-age groups so they interact, and there are amazing opportunities around the room for them to engage in what they're interested in. But what I'd like to say is what drives that. And that's really the three keys to Montessori. And the first is that it's really founded on a deep respect for children and a huge and deep knowledge of the child's development. The second is that there's a conviction that it is within relationship that the most impressive and deep knowledge and education can happen. It's in relationship that learning takes place. And the third one that I wanted to just highlight is the importance that Montessori brought to the child's need for independence and autonomy really early in life, earlier than sometimes we even recognize, and that needs to be coupled with self-discipline and responsibility, and that there are ways to actualize that and bring that out in children in the classrooms. So I'll talk about each one of those three elements as briefly as I can. There's so much depth to the information. But first of all, Montessori was a consummate observer of children. She was trained as a doctor, medical doctor, scientist. And so she brought all of that to observing children in their natural environments. She was really a lone voice in her time. This was like back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Because at that time, the notion about children were that they were blank slates or empty vessels. And there's still a lot of that assumption today. and that they need to be filled with information in order to have some place in life. And this is so contrary to what she saw, because she saw children learning in a capacity that our adult brains couldn't even do. And we know today that that's evident. We now have research on brain studies that really show this incredible growth of the neurons during the 0 to 6 age range, and that we start cutting back as early as age 7 for other reasons. But she witnessed this, and she was not one of the many clinicians who were deciding that let's find out when the child can actually think like an adult, as if that was, now they can think. With that understanding, she saw that adults were really guides in life. They were not the tell, direct, that guides were supports. And also in that, she was really able to identify some very important phases of development, which she called sensitive periods. Are we behind? Am I behind? Her words. Our care of the child should be governed not by the desire to make him learn things, but by the endeavor always to keep burning within him that light which is called intelligence. And to be able to inspire children is one of the most gratifying things that I have ever done. And it's not like it happens every day, because there are just sort of logistical things that you have to deal with. But knowing that we're inspiring to open up to life is just nothing more gratifying, and probably nothing more important for children to recognize, especially these early ages. So in this first phase of 0 to 6 years, she called it the absorbent mind stage. Absorbent mind. Her book, written years ago, is called The Absorbent Mind, because she recognized kids were like sponges. Now, she didn't have all the background information about these brain development phases, but she saw it, and she knew that children were learning at almost unconscious, subconscious level, and that they were taking in their world very much through their sensorial powers, and that's how they learn. And we recognize that today, and we have all these important programs happening for this 0 to 6-year-old because of their ability to take in their world. What I think is really important is that we cannot diminish the ability to take in the world through the senses at this time, and that the multidimensional experience interacting with the environment is critical for brain development. And we really need to be careful about our two-dimensional screens. We really need to not place that in a child's experience too early. It is diminishing. We have information that when a child interacts with an object, it lights up parts of their brain that never get lit up when they have a two-dimensional experience. The next phase of life, as she defined it, is the 0 to 12, and this is their elementary years in our world. And most important of this is that she saw imagination bloom at this time, and that imagination was a vehicle for taking in and understanding the world. And when I talk about imagination, it's not just the fantasy play, which is wonderful, but it's about the melding of imagination with the growing cognitive ability. And that by using these two together, children start to wonder about big things. And you've probably been around a 6 or 7-year-old who asks the most phenomenal questions, like way beyond what you think they could possibly form, because they are working together with their imagination and this growing cognitive ability. And so the classrooms for the elementary are filled with opportunity that brings them into these big questions, and that they can pursue interest and answers within this environment. It's out there for them to pursue. We're excited especially about the adolescent phase, because we've just opened a middle school for Montessori, which is harder to find in this area. Back east you might find them, here it's harder. But there's such a great understanding of the middle schooler. She referred to the middle schooler as the Erdkinder, which means earth child. And so how does that relate to adolescents as we know them? Her observations, what we all can confirm, is that children are going through this very, very rapid growth, and then there's this sort of pulsating hormonal growth too, which doesn't keep them very steady. We all know we're on a roller coaster ride. One day you see your child this way, and in the next couple of minutes, all of a sudden they're going into another phase of that roller coaster, and they present themselves like almost a different child. You know, what did you do with my child? But what she said is that during this time, it's critical for the adolescent to be in touch with nature, to be involved with big activity, so that they are working hands-on, whether it's farming or conservation or ecological work. That they have this balance, because it's the natural world that helps them balance out. It's the physical activity that creates balance. So it's a big contrast to our be in our desks, working in our intellect all day long. And it's a wonderful balance for kids. So we get to see that this year with our launched middle school. I'd like to invite you to, because I'm not really talking specifically about curriculum, but I'd like to invite you to a November 20th showing at our school. We lay out all of the curriculum from for 6-year-olds through 12-year-olds and touch on the middle school. It's a phenomenal layout. And so you could come to see how rich the environment is for them to learn within. Education cannot be effective unless it helps a child to open up himself to life. And I cannot think of anything greater for a child. So what's driving our curriculum? I think it was spoken about by a few people. And definitely one thing that, you know, being in education for 40 years, I can see this one thing come in, you know, we all have to do that, and then now we all have to do this, and pretty soon we're going to buy thousands of dollars of textbooks, and then we're going to destroy them and get the next level in. And it all seems to be very external from the child's own needs. And I really have to question, you know, is it just fad driving some of these changes? You know, is it our own fascination with the technology we're developing that's creating some decisions? Are those decisions really appropriate for our children? You know, is it the investment that companies have in their textbooks or their testing products? And I really have to say probably a lot of yeses in that. And I really want to call us to really say, what do children need? Not what we need them to do. What do they need? And meeting those needs, we really allow them to flourish as human beings, and probably potentially have much more to give to our world than we might even imagine ourselves. So, second element, relationship and learning. It was very important to Montessori and to see this incredible power that happens in relationship and the sharing of knowledge between people. And that imprints and impresses much more deeply than maybe some of our two-dimensional experiences today. But what she started with first is not just relationship to the teacher and the outer relationship, but she really talked about relationship the child has within themselves. That they need to nurture their inner life, that they need to take time to acknowledge that this is a place, this is going to be a center of being where they can retreat for peace, where they can retreat and help them find answers as they move forward. And that inner life is really critical. And she really acknowledged that. And we have many ways in our classrooms where we can actually work with that too, and acknowledge children for that depth, and validate their inner experience. It is not enough for the teachers to love the child. She must first love and understand the universe. She must prepare herself and truly work at it. That next relationship with adults was really important. It was something that she went to the League of Nations to talk about. She said that if we work out our relationship with our child and the adult, and it's respectful, and it's cooperative, and it's honoring, that we're planting the seeds of peace in that relationship, and that the child takes that and relates to most of the rest of life from that understanding. And she was speaking in the middle of 2 wars happening in Europe during those times. And she was just saying, you know, we need to do this for children. They need to have relationships with the adult that are power sharing, win-wins, and that they're heard. I kind of skipped around here, sorry. But that relationship goes farther. So in our classrooms, there are multi-age groupings. So that means that they're working with kids who are older, kids who are younger. This stimulates a lot of community, a lot of collaboration, and the ability to help each other. It really removes the teacher from just being the resource. It's really amazing to watch the kids help each other. They can learn so much from each other. And the thing that I would like you to see on November 20th, if you come visit, is this array of information. We're really presenting the world in all its integrity and its interconnectedness in our curriculum, so that children see that they have a relationship to this huge, amazing world that we live on, and that they eventually have a place in it, that they have a place. This quote really inspires that we really are not just trying to open head, put in information, and now they'll be able to do well. We want to inspire the whole individual and let children know that they're developing themselves into that adult, and that they do the work that we do, that we're inspired by the universe itself, and we share it with those children. So the last point of this, it's actually not the last point, but I'll try to speed up, that independence, self-discipline, responsibility, freedom blend. And that Montessori saw that children could become independent and know how to take care of themselves very early on. And that these experiences, step by step, really make for confidence in the child as he grows or she grows through everything. So we see it in the environment in our classrooms. We encourage that independence in so many different ways. So they have child-sized things appropriate to their level. They have materials around them that they can go for, study, and be interested in. And we do a great deal of what we call now project-based learning, which was something Montessori had started a long time ago. Again, in independence, this is like the key saying, never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed in. Even if we have to stand by and hold back, let them continue to work, because there's tremendous success, tremendous growth in that process. And there's nothing greater than to see that your child, I'm sure you've seen that, they've succeeded in something and they are just lit up. It's like the most amazing experience. And that is so nurturing to themselves and so affirming to themselves. Besides having this learning environment allow for independence and freedom, we really encourage that at the interpersonal relationships too. So we have ways that they can help each other solve problems. They can sit together and come to solution with each other. And we, you know, that whole thing of, you know, teacher, mommy, so-and-so did this to so-and-so, and that expectation that someone else is going to take care of it. And we really try to guide them into ways that they can take care of it themselves. So this independence, you know, comes into their interpersonal relationships as well. So we do encourage children to explore and to question please question. I love that question, we say. To tinker, and they have all sorts of activities that they can. Some of our kids are so kinesthetic, they love to tinker. We had this amazing setup of electrical setup, which was wired and going from one room over to the other room that this one child just wanted to do, and he set up a little communication device there, created the code, not unlike Morse code, but similar to that. And that kind of tinkering is so gratifying for kids. And just to try the new things. So, to stimulate life, leaving it free, to unfold itself, that is the first duty of education. Again, the Montessori materials, Montessori is well known for her materials and for the amazing sequence and visual consistency. There's nowhere else in the world of education that I have found that has a more consistent, better developed, hands-on materials for Montessori than Montessori, and that the children can discover their own formulas, they can discover their own algorithms, things that they tinkered with in primary, all of a sudden we're now using in the upper elementary to explain Pythagorean theorem or the workings of polynomials, and they just bridge a tremendous amount of knowledge. And they allow that independence again. This is probably something that I experience quite frequently, and it is gratifying. The greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are now working as if I did not exist. And that is truly I feel like I have succeeded by being out of the way and allowing their own interests to happen. And I have stepped out of the classroom many, many times to have this experience. And the kids just proceed. They don't need me. They don't need me at all. And I feel like that is affirming to me in my work too. The nice thing about Montessori is that there are wonderful ways to bring Montessori into the home for younger children, and especially for younger children. And some of that is just developing our own relationship with the child, but also making things available so children can take care of themselves. The 2-year-old can really begin to go to the cabinet, a low cabinet, and take out what they need, find a little, or have a little table that is about their size. They can then give themselves water, they can then make their food, and there is tremendous pride in that ability to take care of self. This is really great for the playroom or the bedroom. A couple things to do would be to get rid of the toy chest because it's clutter and it does not respect each of the things that they own. Keep open shelves. Put them where they can see them and where they have a place. Honor what they have to use. And they can be proud of taking off and putting away. The same thing with clothing. We tend to put things in drawers. So again, with younger children, whatever not visible is out of sight. Who thinks about it? So open shelves for clothing, where just the kinds of choices that are appropriate for now, that you want to frame, can go on there, and the children can get their own things. They can begin to dress themselves. So there's a lot of ways of just simplifying. We don't need a lot of stuff. And being able to keep some of them visual gives a tremendous sense of self-care and confidence to children young, early on. And they love to put things in order. And isn't that nice in a household? The older child, for our school, a lot of the homework is really what we call practical life. And the homework is really about householding. What do they want to know how to do at home? What could they want to learn? And we send these kinds of things home, and the parents sort of brainstorm with children, and the kids come back with some of the things they've learned, and they tell other kids about it, and they inspire each other. But they learn to take care of themselves, and I think they get to learn from parents, and they are cooking, they're repairing things, they're helping with chores, but it's not just chores. It's like, I'm learning how to do this. And it's a very different approach. And again, that kind of refers to Dale. He was saying, you know, how do kids, when they leave home, how do they manage their lives? So we're getting all of this early on. And if Montessori kids wanted to go to the unschool, they'd be ready because they have a lot of practical life under their belt. So I put up a few resources. Montessori has written hundreds, well, not hundreds, I'm exaggerating, lots of books. And many people have written about Montessori. But the one book up there that I want to point out and to offer to families is the last book on the big disconnect. It's a wonderful book. It really helps us sort through how much two-dimensional screen we want in our household, how to say where your limits are to help that with children and working with children. It's a very balanced book because it acknowledges the places that it is really important to be involved with screen, but it also makes it very clear where it is not supportive of the child's development at a certain time. It's a great book, and I know we all are struggling with those because screens are everywhere, and we see families sitting in restaurants who don't even talk to each other anymore. So the last thing is just if you'd like to know more about Montessori and her incredible pioneering. She was nominated for the UN for the Peace Medal 4 times in her lifetime. And she never got it, but she certainly did a lot of work. So you can learn a little bit more about Montessori. And visit us. Thank you very much.